Hello and welcome to How to Deal with Grief and Trauma. My name is Natalie Himmelrich. How to Deal with Grief and Trauma is completely self-funded, produced and edited by me, Natalie Himmelrich. Consider making a small donation to support the podcast. Go to bit.ly/support, capital G, capital T, and podcast. I repeat, bit.ly/supportgt podcast. Thank you so much. And for more information, please visit Natalie's website, join the podcast Instagram page, and subscribe to the newsletter to receive updates on future episodes. Welcome to the special series on the many faces of trauma. In each episode, we'll explore one trauma type in a clear, gentle way, what it is, how it can show up in daily life, and one small step that can help your nervous system feel a little safer. Nothing here is meant to diagnose you, and you're always invited to take what fits and leave the rest. And because this is trauma work, we'll end every episode with a short grounding practice you can do anywhere. Today we're talking about community shock, how public tragedies and disasters can affect not only those directly involved, but also families, witnesses, first responders, and an entire community. This will be general and non-graphic. If you notice activation or shutdown, you're welcome to pause and return later. If you have already listened to Season 16, Episode 161, you'll remember we explored collective grief and trauma after sudden tragedy. What happens in the immediate aftermath, how communities respond, and how media and public attention can intensify stress. This was the episode that gave a voice into the different traumas that we experience individually and as a collective. Today's episode is the companion piece inside this trauma type series. So we're zooming in on community shock as a trauma pathway, what it is, and why the nervous system responds the way it does, and what helps people regain steadiness over time. As always, let's start with a simple definition of what community shock is. Community shock happens when a public event, such as a disaster, accident, or sudden tragedy, disrupts a community's sense of safety and predictability, triggering collective nervous system activation. The key here is collective. The nervous system impact spreads through proximity. For example, it happened here, or identification, which could be named as it could have been me, or relationship, I know someone, and repeated exposure through media, social media, and conversation loops. If you just think about what's happening in the world today, where we are repeatedly exposed to through media, some of those things can activate your previous history of trauma. And community shock can affect different groups differently. Obviously those directly harmed and their families and close friends, but also witnesses, first responders and helpers, the local residents, and the wider public who repeatedly takes in the images and stories, as mentioned before, through this repeated exposure through the media. Even though you can imagine many situations, let's start with one specific story. Imagine a community where a sudden tragedy happens in a public place, somewhere ordinary like a bar, a street, a station, or a local venue. In the days after, the community becomes both close and tense. People check in on each other. Vigils happen. There's kindness, and also a strange alertness. Some people can't stop refreshing the news. Others can't bear to look at it. Some feel numb, some feel angry. Some are desperate to make sense of it. Who's to blame, how it happened, how to prevent it. And even those who weren't there notice their body reacting. Tight chest, shallow sleep, fear in crowds, a new sensitivity to sound. That's community shock. The nervous system realizing that ordinary places aren't always safe, and trying to protect us from that reality. One such event I personally remember clearly is 9/11. Another one is the tsunami hitting Thailand at that time, which at that time I was glued in front of the news, not even noticing the flood of information again and again. It was after that I decided not to watch television again because I realized the secondary and tertiary trauma I experienced from just watching the news. What happens in a nervous system? From a polyvagal informed perspective, community shock can quickly shift a community from safety and connection into protection. So that's an important part in here because it's not just one person, but it's a whole community. As you already know, there's two ways that the system can go, either mobilized protection or the shutdown protection. In terms of a community, mobilized protection can look like hypervigilance, the startle response being very active. There's a restless energy and an urgency, emotionally also agitation, anger, and a sense of, I need to know everything, which is where information seeking as a way to control things or as an attempt to control things. The shutdown protection can look like numbness, fog, disbelief, a sense of withdrawal, I can't take it all in, and fatigue and collapse after the initial adrenaline spikes. And the community shock often includes rapid cycling, from intense emotion to numbness, to anger, to exhaustion. I mean, obviously these states are interchangeable, and this is normal. The system is trying to integrate something that doesn't fit the brain's expectation of safety. Let's have a look at the ripple effects. Who is impacted and how? Community shock creates layers of impact. First of all, those directly affected. They may experience acute trauma responses, like intrusive images, fear, avoidance, and sleep disruption. Then the second layer are the families and the close circles of those who are directly affected. They often experience a combination of grief, trauma, and logistical overwhelm. And the third layer are the witnesses and the what I call near misses. So the near miss experiences can create intense, it could have been me, responses. And then the fourth layer is the helpers and the first responders. They always deal with high intensity exposure, which can lead to secondary stress reaction. And we'll cover this in a later episode. And then the fifth layer is the wider community. And those people may avoid public spaces, become more suspicious or guarded, change routines, and or feel collectively vulnerable. And one important factor is always the media exposure, because repeated viewing of images or details can keep the nervous system activated, especially when there's constant speculation, blame, and a sensational framing. A special part of community shock and trauma is the level of the meaning making. There are elements of blame, rumors, and polarisation shows up. So after a public tragedy, people often try to restore safety by creating a simple story. This can sound like, if we can blame someone, we can prevent it. Or if we understand every detail, we can control it. Or if we pick a side, we'll feel less helpless. So these are obviously the underlying themes. So this kind of meaning making is natural. It's the mind trying to make sense and regain control, where making sense and control is elusive. But it can become harmful when it turns into scapegoating, rumor cycles, re-traumatizing speculation, or social conflict within the community. One helpful frame is the nervous system tries to create certainty when reality feels uncertain. And each nervous system is individual and tries to do that in its own way. So part of recovery is learning to tolerate not knowing while also rebuilding real sources of safety and support. Which leads us to the question, what helps? So here are a few stabilizers that help without framing or forcing moving on. The first one is permission for normal responses. Remember that shock, disbelief, tears, anger, numbness, these are expected. The second one is limit media exposure. It's not avoidance of reality, but it's a helpful nervous system boundary. Choose one time window. Avoid replay loops and prioritize factual sources. The third one is to rebuild predictable routines. Because routine tells the nervous system life continues and we have structure. And they can be small, incremental. The fourth stabilizer is collective support with choice. There will always be vigils or community spaces, support groups. But choose wisely. No pressure as what to do or take part in, but let your nervous system make that choice. The next one, and from my view, the polyvagilance, very important one, is body first regulation. So walking, taking a breath, orienting, warmth, basic cues that safety exists in the present. And the sixth one is if you're supporting someone, offer presence, practical help, and simple language, such as, I'm here. We don't have to make sense of this yet. Or what would help you today? Quiet, company, or practical support. Our grounding practice for today is what I call the circle of control. This practice is useful after public events because it reduces helplessness without denying reality. Step 1. Hand circles. With your fingers, draw a small circle in your palm. This is what I can control. Step 2. Name 3 controllables. Name 3 small things you can control right now. As an example, this is your breath, your posture, or one next step, who you contact, and how much news you consume. If you need time, you may want to stop here and then restart. Step 3. Name 2 supports you can lean on that feel supportive to you. It could be a person, a routine, a place, a resource. And step 4. 1 sentence. Say gently to yourself, I can't control everything. I can support my nervous system today. I can't control everything. I can support my nervous system today. Step 5. Exhale. As always, make a slow exhale and let your shoulders drop slightly. Let's do that together. If you want to take a couple more exhales, just stop here and then restart. If you'd like support as you move through the series, check my website for the free resources offered for both those affected by grief, loss, and trauma and those supporting them. In the next episode, we'll talk about secondary and vicarious trauma, how helpers, professionals, and close supporters can be impacted, and what helps protect the nervous system. Until next time, stay safe. Thanks for listening to How to Deal with Grief and Trauma. If you'd like to be updated on future episodes, please subscribe to my newsletter on nataliehimmelrich.com. If you need grief support, please contact me for a 30 minutes free discovery session. How to Deal with Grief and Trauma is produced and edited by me, Natalie Himmelrich. To support this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe to or follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you. And remember to keep breathing. I promise it will get easier.